Baseball ponders a new approach to the designated hitter, but we begin today with multiple reports that Urban Meyer is very close to reaching an agreement to coach the Jacksonville Jaguars. Meyer won college titles at Florida and Ohio State, but he has never coached in the NFL. Wilbon, what expectations should we have from Meyer and the Jaguars?
Well, I don't know about what expectations we should have. Tony, you know me long enough to know I think this generally fails. It fails much more often than not when somebody goes from the college ranks to the pro ranks. But let me just say this. Jimmy Johnson is a guy who did not fail because he won a couple of Super Bowls, and really all three of the Cowboys Super Bowls in the 90s should be his and not one to Barry Switzer. Jimmy Johnson, I think, is more the mold for Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer, a guy who he doesn't just embrace professionalism and pro coaches and pro professional players in the NFL and all of that. He is neck deep in it. He loves it. He has exchanges with these coaches. He goes to camps. He goes to practice. He is not a guy who says, oh, the pros, I don't like that. So I associate Urban Meyer more with that way of thinking, like Jimmy Johnson, who would go to people's camps and create weeks where he would go study the pros. Jimmy did all that. Urban is in that mold to me. Bobby Ross, another guy who went from college to the pros and succeeded, got to a Super Bowl. So I put him with them, but I ain't going to say I know this. It rarely works.
I'll give you another name, and that's Pete Carroll, who won a title in college and then won a title in the NFL.
Yeah, but Pete was a pro coach first. Pete was in the pros first.
But most of the time with Steve Spurrier, with Lou Holtz, with Nick Saban, all accomplished coaches who won national titles, they go to the pros and it doesn't work. Here's what we know about Urban Meyer's coaching career. He wins quick and he quits quick. Can he win quick at Jacksonville? Okay, Jacksonville is a bad team. They don't have a great fan base at all. Recently, players who've gone there, like Leonard Fournette and Jalen Ramsey, have said, get me out of here. So it's important, if they draft Trevor Lawrence, that he is simpatico right away with Urban Meyer. This is an important stuff. I don't know if a college coach can get professional athletes to listen to him in the way that they can do that in college, where they own you. They own you. It's different in the pros.
But Jimmy Johnson did that, right? Again, it's a short list, Tony.
Yes.
You're right. Jimmy Johnson did that again. Bobby Ross did that. And Bobby, I might need to disqualify him because Bobby Ross was a special teams coach with the Chiefs, so he was in pro football like Pete Carroll. Those guys are pros, all right? And then they went to college and they shouldn't even be counted. But something about Urban Meyer and his manner and the way he treats these kids and the way he communicates with them. And I know they're not kids anymore. They become men very quickly. I don't know if I was going to create an exception category. I think I might have Urban Meyer in that.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you how quickly he wins. At Utah, he inherited a 5-6 team. He went 10-2 and 12-0. At Florida, he took over a 7-5 team. He went 9-3, 13-1 national championship. At Ohio State, took over 6-7, went 12-0, 12-2, 14-1 national championship. It's breathtaking. But we both need to concede that most of the time it doesn't work. It certainly doesn't work as fast. Even with all those draft picks, 11 picks.
Yeah.
Even with
far more failures than that, Tone. All right, enough football. Let's get back to that blockbuster James Harden deal from yesterday. Nets general manager Sean Marks said this morning that Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving, missing in action, all wanted this deal to happen. Quote, everyone has raised his hand and said, we're in. They know what's at stake here, close quote. Mike Vaccaro of the New York Post says anything other than a title is an abject failure. Tone, I'm guessing you agree with this.
Well, I'm going to split hairs because I don't know the context in terms of time. I'm going to split hairs in this regard. I don't think it's a bust if they don't win a title this year. I think if they get to the finals this year and don't win, that's okay. I'm going to use Miami as the model when they got LeBron and Bosh and they put them with Wade. And they got to the finals the first year and they lost to Dallas. Then they won 2 in a row. Then they lost another final. So LeBron got to 4 finals in 4 years and won 2 of them. That, to me, is total vindication and total success. If the Nets do that, fine. That's what you're looking to do.
I'm not even going to compare him with that because LeBron James, a mature, grown man from very early on in his life, joined other mature, grown, responsible men, professionals, pros, Hall of Famers, Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and they went to play essentially for Pat Riley, even though Eric Spoelstra was coach. I'm not putting these guys in that category because James Harden and Kyrie Irving.
What?
Durant, wait a minute. James Harden, Kyrie Irving, not like the others. Kevin Durant, yes. Kevin Durant goes out there when he knows he has the risk of a leg falling off. He still goes out there to play. Kevin Durant plays. He plays on blacktop in the summer. He plays on hardwood in the winter. He's the grown man in the room. But it's a lot on him, a lot, Tony, to think he's going to make these other guys, he's going to transform them into professionals. When James Harden has been a quitter, flat out, he quit on this team. You hear what Boogie Cousins and John Wall said? He quit on them. And Kyrie Irving will quit. He'll quit on these guys now. You can't count on either one of them for more than a week. I'm not comparing them to Wade, Bosh, and LeBron, not in this lifetime.
So what I would talk about here, what impressed me was this. The reporting that is being done says Durant and Mike D'Antoni wanted this deal to happen. Durant went to Golden State, a totally selfless team. That indicates to me he thinks James Harden can be selfless, which I never would have thought. Mike D'Antoni coached Harden, and we've seen a lot of stories in the last couple of months how terrible Harden was, how he was poisonous on the team. So if D'Antoni says to get him, that indicates to me maybe those stories are exaggerated. I think the one thing we would agree with, Mike, is that is the team right now that everybody wants to see. They want Kyrie Irving on that team too, because if he doesn't show up, then you can't put bust Tony, if they don't win.
I'm not going to say that Kevin Durant and Mike D'Antoni think anything about James Harden being selfless. Like 99% of people, particularly when it comes to pro basketball, not football, baseball, hockey necessarily, pro basketball, they are seduced, often spectacularly so, by talent. No one is going to deny James Harden's talent or Kyrie Irving's talent. They are spectacularly talented. They're on the all-time talent team. But can you count on them? You know you can't count on Harden in the late spring. And Kyrie Irving, who knows where he's going to be. So they're seduced by talent. Let's see if they're right.
We move now to an intriguing new wrinkle in the DH drama. Jason Stark writes in The Athletic of this idea being discussed in baseball. A universal DH, both leagues, but when your starting pitcher comes out, you lose the DH unless you put him in the field as a position player. After that, if you don't want your pitcher to bat, you go the traditional pinch hitter route. Wilbon, I love this idea. Do you?
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to admit I love it for the wrong reason. I love it because it takes the opener, kind of out of play for those, managers, not the managers. We realize now the managers have nothing to do with it usually. It's the general managers and whoever above them that are obsessed, in some sycophantic way with the numbers and the metrics. They want an opener. They want to tell you when to remove the starting pitcher. It doesn't take the bat out of their hands because some of these people are so absurd. They'll just tell you, we don't even care if we'll move the DH around. We'll figure out how to play with that. So I think some people will try to subvert it, but I like it.
Yeah, your favorite manager, Kevin Cash, wouldn't be able to take Blake Snell out in the fourth inning with a no-hitter because he'd have to lose his DH. This puts emphasis on starting pitching, which I like because the team I root for, the Washington Nationals, they have starting pitching. It takes the strategy, shifts it from the bullpen, as you are saying, into starting pitching. It also does a pretty interesting thing in terms of who's going to be your DH. Because you're going to get them, especially if you're on the road, Mike, you're going to get 3 bats, by the 5th inning. You guys going to get up 3 times. But if he's just a big bopper, if he's just someone who hits it out of the park, you're not going to have him in the 8th inning or the 9th inning when you really want him. That guy, the big poppies of the world, might become, because they don't field, they might become pinch hitters. And it's possible that the new DH will be much more of a contact hitter and someone who can play the field. I think it's really intriguing. Like many of the new rules, I think it's intriguing if it goes through.
I think that these numbers freaks will subvert it by having 2 or 3 DH types on the bench. and then you can take out the starting pitcher and put in another DH. How hard is that?
Right.
So if you especially
gotta play
if you're
the
talking
field,
about
Mike.
contact guys, no, Tony,
Well,
you can
the DH would have to play
change
the
them
field.
around like pitchers, but not long.
As long as they play the field. You know who may have a lot of play in this? Theo Epstein, who's now a consultant to Major League Baseball on rule changes. He's your boy, and you're going to call him a freak? Go ahead, knock yourself out.
No, not him.
Let's take
the
a
rest
break.
of them.
Oh, of course not him. He won for the Cubs.
That's
Coming up,
right.
would you rather have Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen in that game on Saturday?
And are the Packers or the Chiefs the more vulnerable number 1 seed?
I just
I
like
wonder
it
if
for
Theo's
this
gonna
reason.
keep that
You've
great
got
house he's got
AL
in
rules
Chicago.
for 5 innings, and then you have NL rules for 4 innings. That's
Let's
fun
see
to
how
me.
often
It's
these
strategy.
guys.
It's time to post my second win of the week in toss-up. Had one earlier. Let's get the first one from our producer over the loudspeaker.
Toss-up, they play on Saturday night. Who would you rather have, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen?
So the first thing I want to say is that there's a 60% chance of snow in Buffalo. Lamar Jackson has never played in snow. He's leery of it. But snow helps you if you're a runner more than if you're a passer. And Lamar Jackson is a great runner. Josh Allen, very good runner. Lamar Jackson, a great runner. Long-term, Mike, I would like Josh Allen because he's got a cannon. He beat the blitz all the time this year. 15 touchdown passes and only 2 picks, and Baltimore blitzes all the time. But what happened last week turned me. Lamar Jackson had a really good game for the first time in a playoff game. And if you ask me which team I actually think is better, I think Baltimore is a little bit better, so I am going to roll the dice, and I'm going to say Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, Tony, the snow is not going to factor in for me, even though Lamar Jackson went to great lengths to say he'd never played in snow. I mean, growing up in South Florida and then playing at Louisville, you're not going to see snow in Kentucky even in the college football season, October and November. But, Tony, Lamar Jackson, and I take either one of them. For the record, I'll have either one.
Yeah.
But Lamar Jackson showed us last week what he can do on one play. He can change the game with his legs with no receiver involved. On one play, that touchdown run was spectacular. I'll take either, but if you press me this week in Buffalo, I might take the homestanding quarterback. Overall, I think I'd take Lamar Jackson.
Okay. All right. Next.
Toss-up, more vulnerable number 1 seed, the Packers or the Chiefs?
I think the Packers are the more vulnerable number 1 seed. I don't think they're going to lose, but I think they're more vulnerable because the Rams have a great defense, and it's hard to beat a great defense often in the playoffs. But having said that, I just don't think that Cleveland can beat Kansas City. I mean, I look at Cleveland, what they did the last 2 weeks to get into the playoffs and then win a game against a hated rival in Pittsburgh with Ben Roethlisberger or without Ben Roethlisberger. That, to me, is their accomplishment. That, to me, is their signature. They finally got in the playoffs and they won a game. I think that's enough. I don't think they'll be as motivated to do that against Kansas City. I think Kansas City is much better than Pittsburgh, and it's coming out of a bye week for Andy Reid, who always wins that way.
If you look at the record of the teams coming out with the bye, I mean, it's overwhelming. It's something like 80% or greater. So the Kansas City Chiefs, God bless Cleveland. All right? What the Browns have done this season and these last guys, I mean, applause. I think they will be as motivated. I'm going to disagree with you there, but they're not beating Kansas City. I don't see the Packers losing either, particularly given, I mean, if Aaron Donald is less than the great Aaron Donald this week physically, they're not going to go up there and beat Green Bay. But they got a shot. They got a chance. I don't see Cleveland having a chance, and that's no comment on Cleveland. No. It's a comment on how great the Chiefs are, particularly with this bye week and Andy Reid and all the stuff they got going for them.
That's it. We're going to take one last break, but still to come will Alabama's offense keep rolling under Bill O'Brien.
And what should we expect when the Sixers host the Heat tonight?
Who's the greater Aaron in this game? Rodgers or Donald? Who's the greater Aaron?
It's Rodgers. It's Rodgers. It's Rodgers, but Aaron Donald is playing his way on.
Happy time, people. Happy 71st birthday, Swen Nader. History lesson, kids. Way back in the early 70s, Swen Nader was the backup center to Bill Walton on two great UCLA championship teams. Nader had come to Southern California from the Netherlands as a child and learned to play basketball there. Nader's primary role at UCLA was to practice hard against Walton, as they were both 6'11". Nader didn't play much, averaged only 3.2 points and 3.3 rebounds as a senior. But his potential was such that the Floridians drafted him in the ABA, and he was a first-round pick by Milwaukee in the NBA, even though he never started a college game. Nader ended up Rookie of the Year with the ABA Spurs, leading the league once in field goal percentage and once in rebounding. In the NBA, Nader played mainly for the San Diego Clippers and led the league in rebounding, making him the only player ever to lead the ABA and NBA in rebounding. Nader averaged 13 points and 13 rebounds in the ABA, 12.2 points, 10.8 rebounds in the NBA, 11 pro seasons in all. And let me repeat, he never started a college game.
And Tony, he went to the ABA first, but if he had gone to the Milwaukee Bucks, who drafted him, there he would have backed up another UCLA center, the greatest one, Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And Milwaukee obviously had to have that in mind when they drafted him. It's such a curious career Swin Nader had.
Absolutely. I'm glad you remember him. I didn't think anybody would remember him except me. Happy anniversary, Stephon Diggs. On this day 3 years ago, Case Keenum found Diggs for a 61-yard touchdown as the final seconds ticked off in a shocking playoff win by the Minnesota Vikings over the New Orleans Saints. That was the play where the Saints DB made the worst play of all time, and it became known as the Minneapolis Miracle. Diggs was the toast of the town, but relations with the Vikings soon soured, and Diggs moved on to Buffalo, where he has helped Josh Allen get into the MVP conversation. Allen to Diggs has become maybe the most potent pass combination in the league, at least alongside Rodgers to Adams, Mahomes to Kelsey, and Murray to Hopkins. This season, Diggs led the NFL in receptions with 127 and in receiving yards with 1,535. He had a relatively small amount of touchdowns, 8, when compared to Davante Adams' 18, but he had one last weekend against the Colts, and he gets another shot this weekend hosting Baltimore.
You know, Tony, I would have said coming into this season and maybe a third of the way through that I'd take Hopkins. And most people would take Hopkins, and you'd be fine taking Hopkins. But those numbers, not the touchdown numbers, but the catches and the yards, those are Jerry Rice numbers, and I have to bow my head when I say that.
No, he's been great. Happy trails to unemployment for Bill O'Brien. Alabama is reportedly bringing the fired Houston Texans coach on as offensive coordinator, replacing Steve Sarkisian, who took the head coaching job at the University of Texas. Before going to the NFL, O'Brien was head coach at Penn State, helping to rebuild that program after the Jerry Sandusky scandal.